See if this will catch up here. Good morning, everyone. Hi, it is Motivational Monday. I am Stacy. This is Walking in My Shoes, and we are loving my veteran this morning. Just wanted to say good morning. Everybody get your coffee, whatever your motivational drink is of the day, because it is Motivational Monday. These are the weekdays we use Monday to set the tone for the rest of the week. When it gives us some motivation and some uplift, we use Mondays to set the tone for the upcoming week. It is a great avenue to be on and be part of and just get our mindset right coming into the rest of the week. So before we get started, let me get some more coffee so at least I sound motivational because it takes me a minute or two to get ready to sound this motivational here. One more swallow of coffee and we'll get started this morning. So how was the weekend? Was it good? Did you survive? Did you make accomplishments? And you did, make sure you write them down. We always use those as accountability. You know, when we sit here and we go through this journey, everybody says, oh, it's this, it's that. People don't get it. They don't understand. We have this intense loneliness at times. And we go through this journey and we feel like we're by ourselves. And we feel like when you're in the middle of a battle, you don't feel like you're ever going to get to the top. When you're in the middle of a race, especially like a marathon, you never think you're going to get to the finish line because you're caught up in the middle. You know, you're caught up in the middle. So you don't see where you've been. You don't see what you've accomplished. I think the only time I ever saw where I really had been is back in the day when my parents had the long station wagon with the rear facing back seat. You can imagine the safety people today. But I got to see, and my entire life in an ambulance. I forget that when I'm looking at the back. But you forget to see sometimes where you've been. And when you take it and you look at your accomplishments and where you've been, what you've done, what have you overcome, you will see that you have the motivation to do the next step. Because it's not always about fixing our relationship with our veteran. It's not always about we're going to have overnight success, because you don't. It is about walking through and making forward progress. And sometimes that progress comes from within. Sometimes that progress is our progress. It is the way we learn to view ourselves. Because when we view ourselves, all so often, when we're looking at ourselves, we now see that, I was caught up in this muck. I was feeling angry. I was feeling sad. I was resentful. I was hurt. I was all these things. And so we get caught up in that. Good morning, Jen. We get caught up in this overwhelming sense of not accomplishing, of not going forward, of not moving forward. And let me tell you, sometimes when you move forward, you go backwards, and it's okay because you've learned how to navigate forward. You've learned how to get through that part of your life, through that rough patch. And even though you may step backwards, it's okay because in the end, you're still moving forward and it's forward progress. But so sometimes it takes us learning our within. Our within sometimes is where we have to start. The pushing buttons thing. I know that I can push almost every button on Carl. I know that. And you know what? He knows exactly what buttons to push on me too. So we all know what those buttons are. We all know where those places lie. And I can remember so early on, y'all, it was like speed dialing a telephone when I wanted to push buttons. And that's back in before the day of cell phones when you just told Siri what to do, right? It's like I could push buttons like a push button phone, and I knew it, and I could just I was like winning $1 million contest that I had to be the 100th caller, and I can remember doing that, and I didn't realize at the time I was doing that. Good morning, Meredith and Jen. But here's the thing. You're recovering and you're feeling, Jen has been under the weather, and she's recovering from some major surgery with a setback, and then it even makes you dwell in that. Even your recovery stage from where you had surgery, you know, you just you go forward sometimes and then you go backwards and then you go forward and then you go backwards before it ever gets all the way done. So you have to do that. But these button pushings, oh, she doesn't know what buttons to push on anyone. I love you, Sarah. She thinks her talking is the button pushing. It's the non-filter, but I like the non-filter. So you have to understand that we get our buttons pushed, right? We get our buttons pushed. We know how to push these buttons back. We do this all the time. And when you don't see where you've come from, you don't see like there's progress being made. I talk about and people laugh at me when I first started doing it. And I've stopped doing it, and you can tell almost. I mean, I write it down in my journal, but I don't write it on the cards anymore. And you can almost tell, and so I'm going back to that. You can almost tell when we don't make accomplishments or when I don't feel like I've made accomplishments, and I flip through my stand-up head and I'm like, oh crap, I did all this today. But because I don't tangibly see where I've been, because sometimes you have to go backwards before you go forward, and sometimes you make forward progress looking for this goal, and along the way you have to stop and go over somewhere else, and you don't realize that what you're learning somewhere else is actually going to help you reach your goal at the end. We don't always realize that. We don't, morning Pamela, we don't always get that. We don't always understand that sometimes along the way there are detours. And so we get set, we get depressed, and we get uptight, and we get anxious, and we get angry, and we get ourselves going. And you know what? We push our own buttons. And that's the scary part. We can push our own buttons. Why do we push our own buttons? Because we all have our own baggage, y'all. We all have our own baggage. And sometimes when you are, when you are the the person who is the doer for everybody, right? And you are that person. You tend to not believe that you deserve enough. So when you start to believe that, hey, look, I don't deserve good things in life. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve that. I'm the one that my boss should yell at. I'm the one that they should have to do the endless piles of laundry. I'm the one who's going to have to discipline the kids. I'm the one who's going to have to go to the PTA meeting. Oh, you want me to make cookies on top of that? Oh, I'm now the team mother. When you become that, and all that is done, these people, even though you're ready to say no, because you know that's our right, and it's the right we should learn to exercise is the right to say no to things we cannot do. Okay? We do that. So when we get those buttons pushed, and we take all this stuff in, you realize that people are pushing our buttons to get us to say yes. Because what they say to you when you're now, look, I'm busy, I'm working, I got this going on, I've got the going on, like I just cannot take care of doing the team mother for the kids this year. I just cannot do that. And so what do? They come to you and they're like, you did such a good job last year, and there's nobody who can do it. And these boys have played so hard, or these kids have played so hard, and they deserve the kind of snacks that you gave them. And you know what you say? Okay. Because somebody came along and knew you're kind hearted, and so they pushed your button. And it doesn't just have to be your veterans button, people push our buttons. So in our motivation, in our getting ourselves together, in our moving forward, we got to learn when we set our boundaries. Those boundaries aren't for our veteran, they're for us. They're for me, my bubble, my space. Who's going to come into my space? Who am I letting into my space? What drama am I putting in my space? What is here to protect me? And so when you allow people to come in and push your buttons, even though they might do them remotely, they're still affecting your space. And we have to learn to get past that. We have to learn that it's okay not to do that. And you know what? People still push my buttons. I still push other people's buttons. Carl still pushes my buttons. I still push his buttons a lot. I'm not proud of that, by the way. We still know how to push the buttons. The key is that are you pushing them less, and are you letting less people push yours. See, there's the key here. The key here is, are you letting people continue to push your buttons? Because guess what? The buttons are on the inside. And if you have set good boundaries, people's hands aren't going to get in there and continue to push those buttons. Oh, Meredith, it took a long time to get here. I'm not here all the time. Okay, I'm on this going forward and backwards slide thing. I'm not perfect by any means, but I will tell you, people don't push my buttons like they used to. People don't push my buttons like they used to. Right? They don't do that anymore. I've learned to set boundaries. Do I do them all the time? No. Do I keep them all the time? No. Do I try? Yes. When I cross the boundary and I cross somebody else's boundary, or I let things into my boundary, I can now tend to pull back a lot quicker and see that I'm doing it. I can do that. It doesn't mean that it happens overnight. Yes, it's slowly going to get better. And guess what's going to happen? Meredith, as you slowly get better, as you slowly get good at this, as you slowly get doing this, one thing is going to lead to another, and the next and the next and the next. And I'm going to tell you what. Family, siblings, parents, hardest people ever. Siblings, parents, hardest people ever to keep your boundaries with. It wasn't until this last trip to my mom's that for the first time ever, the entire trip, I did not feel like I was 13. And the good thing about that is, the great thing about that is this. The best part about that was simply this. When I didn't feel 13 because I didn't let her push my buttons, not that she was intentionally pushing them, but my mom, everybody has a way of pushing people's buttons. But because I didn't let that happen, see, my attitude was better. Because I didn't let that happen, my attitude was better. But the thing you've got to accept is you've got to accept that we're going to fail at this. Okay? So, we're talking about, don't let people push your buttons. Don't let people push your buttons. Set your boundaries, set your boundaries, set your boundaries. Do this, do this, do this, and your life is going to get better. And then what happens is, the very first time, hey Nakia, the very first time that we stop or we fail at something, we think of ourselves as a failure. So when we do, we stop doing it again. And now we're back to where we were. So the victory here, that's why I'm telling you, victory wells are important to keep up with where you're at. The victory here is knowing that you let somebody cross that boundary, even if they did, and still stopping them and saying, you know what, I'm sorry, you're not allowed in here. That's your victory. That's your motivation. And Meredith, things with your sister will get better because you know what? Actions speak way louder. Actions always speak louder. So when you do this, and Carl tells me this all the time, and I'm not really good at this all the time, okay, can I just say that? I'm really not good at this all the time. But actions speak louder. So when they're seeing you set these boundaries, and whether that's your spouse or whether that's anybody, when they see you set these boundaries and you set them and they try to cross them and you keep pushing back and saying, no, this is the way it is. No, this is the way it is. Then it is easier for them to accept because it's finally in any rat race, little things with the hamsters and they run and they get in a little maze and they beat their head into the wall like 900 times and then all of a sudden they decide it's time to turn around. That's what may happen. That's what may happen to your sisters. That's what may happen to our veterans when they try to cross our boundary. That's what may happen to our kids. We even do that with the dog, for crying out loud. We all do it with the dog. Okay, mouse get down, mouse get down, mouse get down, mouse get down. This is where you go when we eat. Mouse do this. And we've said it for like almost a year, right? But we're still creating boundaries with the dog. And what do? You have to consistently say no, because the first time I let him on the couch when I'm trying to eat, guess where he's going to think he can go every time? And so even though we've said no for 9 months, if I let him on the couch while we're eating, guess what's going to happen? He thinks he can do it every time now, and everything I've worked for 9 months isn't completely gone, because when I go back to reinforcing that, When I go back to saying, oh, I screwed up. And when I go back to reinforcing it, it may take a time or two or three for them to understand, for Mouse to understand that no, you can't be on the couch when we eat, and he'll finally get it. And that's what happens when you learn to set boundaries. Yes, people are going to cross them. Yes, people are going to push at them. You can't defend every boundary you have 100% of the time. Okay? Yeah, and sometimes things do not get better. Some people do not accept the assertive vision of you. That's right, but guess what? That's not their problem. That's mine. I have to like me. Nobody else does. I have to like me. Nobody else does. And you know, have you ever seen like in the reality of and I've done this when I've hired managers and stuff. Have you ever seen the reality behind this? When you're going to go hire a good manager, you don't ever hire the meek and mild. You don't ever move up the yes girl or the yes guy. You don't do that. You want the person that usually pushes you the most. You want that person who gets things done. You want that person who can stand up and be assertive. And that's what happens, and we've all probably seen it in jobs and whatever, that's what happens. And then you're sitting back and you know, you're like, what did I do wrong? Well, you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. And the key is right. Make sure you don't have so many boundaries that either one can keep up with what they are. You know, when we first started talking about boundaries, like I write them down. They're clear. The boundaries we have are clear. Clear. Crystal clear. And when you write them down and you do two or three and you start to accept those two or three, and the thing is that while you're working on these two or three, 50 more things may flood in, and one of them may initially be more important than the two or three you started with, right? Than the two or three you started with boundary wise. And they may be more important than that. But you know what? You can't go and then do it. You got to accept the fact that you're moving on with the boundaries you have. Otherwise, you just become all of this all over everywhere, and nobody knows what to do. And that's where you get your motivation. You get your motivation from the fact that you look at your successes. We look at our motivation that we sit here and we say, you know what? I recognize. Because recognizing, right? Oh no, honey. No, 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 no. Sorry. If you have too many, you're not their parent, you're their spouse. You're not their parent, you're their partner. So when you have too many, you're going to get into I love you. What's going to happen is when you get too many boundaries, it becomes rules. It becomes negativity. Then they don't do, you know, they cross the boundary. It's not do what you want them to do because they have a right not to do a damn thing. You have a right not to do a damn thing. Those are rights. Okay, but when the boundaries are clear and you ask specifically for what you want, and when those boundaries are clear, and you're good with that stuff, then you move forward and you can go on. And yes, you have to work on your core ones. You have to take their 17 rights, and you have to look at those and really decide what is. But you can't even make them get therapy. You can't make them not stop drinking. You can't do anything to anybody. Okay? So you just take your time and work through them. And if you need me, Meredith, you can message me and we can talk about what you need to, anything I can help you with there, love. So what I'm talking about values and boundaries is this. When you get your motivation, see, being able to see there's an issue, being able to see there's a problem, being able to understand that there's something not going right, and being able sometimes to step out of that and realize you can't fix that today, but hey, I screwed up today, but I did better than I did the time before, and now I'm aware that I crossed the boundary with this too. Say, this is where you're going, and then you get your motivation, and you're like, you know what? I'm accomplishing things day by day. I'm accomplishing things one at a time. That's where Carl and I are so different. I'm the accomplished 90 things at one time person. Okay, flat out. And this is the part that is so ironic. I'll be like working on 6 or 7 things in the house, 6 or 7 things going on, like 6 or 7 things. Carl is this, let's do one thing and get it handled. Let's do one thing and get it handled. Y'all, that drives me crazy, but that's a personality difference. And he'll be like, let's do one thing and get it handled. At the end of the day, though, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, at the time frame it would take, do you realize that both of us had the same amount of stuff done? It's just his approach was different than mine, and that's okay. And so you learn as you're going forward that you got to deal with one issue at a time. And when you start to learn the one issue at a time, and you look at the scenario, right, and you look at the scenario, it is so different. When you look at the out from the outside, you can see the accomplishments. You can see those accomplishments. You can see what you've done or where you're going. And I'm gonna tell you, when you start to see where you're going, you're gonna see, and this is how any relationship works. You see that you've now set boundaries for yourself. You now see yourself moving in a particular forward motion, right? Let's move in any motion would be good, but we'll work on forward. Sometimes you go side to side, sometimes you go backwards, but it's being in motion. Okay? So when you're moving forward and you're starting to move forward and you have these same expectations that your sister move at the same speed that you are, that your parents move at the same speed that you are, that your veteran moves at the same speed and accepting it that you are, that your boss moves it, that your kids, that anybody you interact with is supposed to accept and move on at the same speed that you are. Well, no, they don't. You kind of move on and they will run to catch up. And they will. It's amazing. Eventually, that catching up happens and you keep moving forward or you keep moving because this is what happens. If you stop and you wait for them to catch up, whoever it is, you're going to sit yourself in your own little pile of misery and you're going to go right back to this pile of misery that you were in because you didn't keep going. The end of the day, as much as I love that man and as much as he loves me, he doesn't make me happy. I make me happy. Okay, and that's not being selfish. That's not sounding arrogant. That's not being self-centered. Okay, at the end of the day, I make me happy. Now, will I say that my relationship with him is part of my happiness? Absolutely. My relationship with him is a humongous part of my happiness. My relationship with him, even our arguments. If we argue and it doesn't come out and I'm not talking about me getting my way or him getting his way, but it doesn't resolve in a quicker, more smooth manner, then I don't see that necessarily as a victory. I see that as, oh, this is something we have to work on again. Stacy, who has to work on it? Did you do something? What could you have done? Not did you. What could you have done to make this outcome better? Because I'm telling you right now, in every single conflict we have, our actions or reactions affect the outcome. It may not be that we caused it. It may not be that anything caused it. But at the end of the day, our actions or reactions can affect the outcome. So you have to just step back and look at those failures and say, you know what? I kind of screwed up here. This situation was not what it could have been. I could have done this, 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 and this. Okay? And when you acknowledge that, first of all, to yourself, it is really important. But the next person you should acknowledge it to is to the person that you had the conflict with. It is, I'm learning, and I'm just learning this. It's so much easier not for me to go in to Carl and say, I'm sorry. It's much easier to say, hey, last night when this happened, if I would have done this or this, things could have been so much different. I see how I fueled, or I see how I snapped, or I see what could have been different. And when now you're starting to see your own flaws, because we all have them, when you start to see your own flaws and then you acknowledge those flaws to somebody else, that you're not perfect, now you want to talk about getting on communication. Remember the part about communicating at the same level, that one of the pairs program that I think Michelle and Damon take talks about sitting eye to eye. Okay, they actually suggest you sit on the floor and look eye to eye, or a table. Yeah, Carl and I are not sitting on the floor looking eye to eye. I'm going to tell you that now. But we did learn to turn and face each other. So you do that. But when you're talking about getting on that eye to eye level, sometimes when you go out and you say, look, don't point out what they did wrong, what I could have done to have mitigated this situation or lessened this situation. It's not taking, okay? It's not taking on it's not taking on ownership of the bad situation, of their behavior. It's taking ownership from yours. And when people see you practice taking ownership of your own mistakes or your own shortcomings or your own shortfalls, guess what? They are more likely to be accountable for theirs. But here's the key. Let me go back to your keys here. Your keys are, you can't take that for them, because when you take that for them, you enable them. Nakia was very clear. She makes this comment, and I love it in her thing. She said early on, when her and Richard started to work on this, she said, look, I'll mend, we'll go down here. If we broke this fence together, we'll go down here and we'll fix the fence together. But any fence that you broke, you have to mend. And any fence that I broke on my own, I have to mend. And I thought about that. I was like, what the heck? And it makes so much sense. Because if both of you got in a situation developed that required both of you to argue, because remember, I'm telling you now, it takes two people, at least two people, okay? I do try to stand in front of my mirror and argue with myself and say, please don't get so old, but it doesn't listen. But it takes two people. So if you can go in and say, hold on, I was accountable for this. I was accountable for that. Not you did. I was accountable for this. I was accountable for that. Now what's happened is you sitting together have started to mend that fence. And now there's not this, well, you did it wrong, and you did it wrong, and you did it wrong, and you did it wrong. Because we hear that a lot already. That gets twisted to us a lot. Well, you did this wrong, or you did, or that, and we had that conversation this weekend. And he said, I'm not telling you you're doing it wrong. I said, but the way it comes across, it does. Now, it's taken me a long time to be able to say, but the way it comes across, it does. But you can say that, and that's okay. And you should say that, because that too is okay. See, that is what it's about. It's about communicating and seeing that in spite of everything we do, we are always moving somewhere. Those are your successes. Those are the things that motivate you for every single day. When you get stuck, look at where you've been. It doesn't have to be on a Monday, y'all. You can get stuck on a Wednesday. But if you have an accountability, whether it's written on a card on the wall, or whether it's written as a note in your phone, or whether it's written as an event on your calendar, or whether it's written in a journal, and you can go back and you can say, wow, I accomplished this. I accomplished this. Now you have motivation to see if you can accomplish the next thing. The next thing. And Sarah, you're right. It is daily for you. And as you two work on communicating and doing and moving more forward and understanding the limitations of the illnesses and not enabling, because it's easy. It's easy for them. Well, I don't feel. No, no, no. I mean, for crying out loud, I get a phone call usually at like nap time from Nikisha. Are you taking a nap yet? No, you need a nap. And Carl will be like, you laying down taking a nap? No, you need a nap. So, I mean, occasionally I get that from them. Actually, a lot I get that from them. So you do have to learn to deal with the physical stuff, and you kind of get used to it, and that kind of settles down some as you kind of get used to your routines, and everything will settle down when you learn effective communication in a way that works for you. See, there you go. You can control that, Meredith. Her big thing for the week to accomplish is to go through the clothes and get my house a bit more organized. My OCD is going crazy. Yeah, and see, you can control that. You can control that. You can walk in and say, "I'm not having it." We did that the other day. I'm telling you, it was like uplifting. I'm like, "Oh, this can go to Goodwill. We don't wear this. This can go to Goodwill. Oh, I'm keeping this. Oh, this is," and you can control that. And so it takes your motivation and gets your mindset. Because guess what? Now you're going to be able to go back in and say, "Look what we did." I mean that is so easy. That is so easy to do. I mean, I love it because I went in and cleaned up some stuff, and I get motivated when I look at my accomplishments. It's nice to stand in amongst your accomplishments. That's where you need to be. Don't look at everything as a failure. Look at everything as your accomplishments and where you're at. And what did you accomplish? Because the little things you accomplish are going to add up. The little things that you're doing are going to add up. The little ways that you take care of you are going to add up. And when you start to do that, and when you get behind that, you are going to be able, you are going to be able to handle it. And you're going to be able to say, wow, I did something right. Because our own worst enemy is the I did something wrong in our head. I failed in our heads. I hear it all the time. My own voice in my head says, you're not good enough. You failed. That's not true. It's not true. So for your motivation, do something for you this week. Every week, do something for you. Get motivated. Get behind it. Look at your accomplishments. Don't worry about any failures this week. Just write out your accomplishments. Take a week. Commit yourself to a week to write out your accomplishments. What did you accomplish? What are your victories? Whether it's a tone of voice you changed, whether it's shutting your door at lunch and taking a half an hour lunch break without any interruption, whether it's sitting in the park for that half an hour to have your lunch, whether it's turning the music up really loud and taking a shower by yourself, whatever your motivation, the thing you've done, the accomplishments you've had, and remember, accomplishments are measured in moments, not days. So write them out. Just start making a list. I don't care if you put them on cards. Just make a list. That's number one. Number two, do something for your veteran this week. Do something for your veteran this week. And I don't mean schedule an appointment for him, or I don't mean tell him to take his medicine or her medicine. I don't mean any of that. I mean do something for them. I love you. I fixed your favorite dinner. This is because, hey, let me sit here and watch this godforsaken Transformer movie with you one more time. Whatever it is, do something. Do something. Do something. Do something for them. And then do something for somebody else. Just a note, tell them you love them, tell them hi, tell them smile, tell them whatever. You'd be amazed at what one great little word of happiness does to somebody throughout the day. Throughout the day. And we had that too, man, that happened at our house. And so I did it, and it was like, put the chat, I put it all in the thing, and I said, well, I'm going to do this, but when I'm done, will you put the bags that are going to Goodwill in the car for me? So I still allowed him to stay in it, and it was kind of really cool for us. It worked for us. It doesn't work for everybody. And Nakia, absolutely, say thank you at least once a day. You'd be amazed at what a little bit of manners does in this world. So I'm gonna get off of here. I am Stacy. This has been Walking in My Shoes, and we are loving my veteran. Y'all have a blessed day. Bye.